Yo, here we are 2 weeks after league start, and in my last video I did show off my gear. I did show off that I'm playing Cast When Stunned Chieftain, but I want to go into that a little bit more. I want to show you where we started at the beginning of the league and some updates that I've made recently. So let's get into it. Just for the record, I have been following a lot of the E-Miracle guide, so this is not my own creation. Go ahead and check him out on YouTube. He's got spreadsheets, he's got docs. This is what his minimum requirement build looks like, and the way that I went, it's a little bit different than this. In the early upgrade, it's looking a little bit more like where I was at, where he's using the Razor of the Seventh Sun Midnight Blade, but I never really swapped off of this. So then in his T16 build, he's got a rare weapon that he's crafted himself. I just stayed on that sword because of the Ignite on it. Then getting to his aspirational build, this is looking a lot more like where I'm at now, although I have still made a few tweaks to this. So let's look at where we were after league start. Here in POB, I can show you pretty much the items that I had equipped. For the weapon, I had the Razor of the Seventh Sun Midnight Blade, and again, the main thing here is that it's got a 25% chance to ignite, which is huge. It frees up a lot of ignite chance that I don't have to get in other ways. The Rise of the Phoenix Mosaic Kite Shield's very nice for the max fire res. And the reason that we want max fire res is because we want to get that 90% all res. The helmet that I started with was not a crafted rare, but was instead Vol's Vision. Vol's Vision was a little bit of easy chaos and fire res, but most importantly, it was the life regen. I wasn't using any corrupted items right out the gate when I finished campaign, so this was an easy source of regen, which really helped my survivability early on. I of course had the Cloak of Flame just for the ignite duration, the fire res, the fizz taken as. All of this is very good. All of my rares were basically res and attribute fixing. So I had a mixture of LE and chaos res, dexterity, and potentially intelligence on this gear as well. The Valerium, of course, is the key to the entire build working, so I had that equipped. And then Immortal Flesh, because this is an amazing belt for regen. It's used in basically every starter RF build, so I used it here too. Let's talk about how this build works. What does it do? Well, the core thing, it's called Cast When Stunned. So you're going to be casting a lot of spells when you're stunned. The way that you force a stun to happen is by using the Valerium Moonstone Ring, which sets your stun threshold to be based on your energy shield instead of your life threshold. I am also not going to be getting a ton of energy shield on any of my gear, which means it'll be very easy for enemies to stun me just by hitting me. Now, I am purposely taking hits, which means I need to be a beefy boy. And so my defenses, I'm aiming for 90% all res, I'm aiming for capped chaos res. I also have that ailment avoidance. All of these defensive layers make me incredibly tanky. I'm immune to corrupted blood and bleeding and poison and everything. How does the build actually do damage though? Well, the build does use a Righteous Fire link. Righteous Fire is meant to just be able to kill basic enemies to deal a little bit of damage, but it is not your main damage dealer. The main damage dealer is, of course, your Detonate Dead of Scavenging, which is inside of a Cast When Stunned support link. The main thing we're looking to do with this gem is to have a really large ignite be put onto an enemy so that it starts actually doing damage. So the explosion from this skill does a lot of damage. It's going to make a large ignite. It's going to kill some things. You're going to have the ignite start proliferating. Early on, that's going to come from your Fan the Flames medium cluster jewel. But later on, you can get the prolif on gloves, for example, which frees up that slot. The next important piece of this build, you're a chieftain. Being a chieftain, you have access to Hinekora Death's Fury. Enemies you or your totems kill have a 5% chance to explode, dealing 500% of their maximum life as fire damage. Eventually, you're gonna kill something, you're gonna proc this, and it's going to have a very large explosion, which is going to cause an even bigger ignite. And that ignite is going to spread, and that ignite's going to kill everything, and that's where you start seeing entire screens disappear because everything dies immediately. It's worth noting this build does rely on a lot of enemies existing. If you're just hitting a single target, your damage is dog shit. Here's the Immortal Flesh I used. I prioritized the regeneration of life per second because that's really the only reason I was using it. I also have a skin transfer on it for Malagaro's Restraint, and you might wonder why. It's because you get a sweet MTX by putting it on. If you've got skin transfers, this is a good one. Look at that, I'm a little bubble. Early on you don't have mage blood, so you're gonna need flasks that are either masochists or flagellants, so that you get enough charges back to keep these flasks up as much as possible. Early on, they're going to be what gives you immunity to all of your ailments. Later on, you'll fix this other ways. So, at the 1 week mark when I showed off my gear, I had already swapped off of Rise of the Phoenix. At this point, I had started using Dawnbreaker instead. The reason I swapped to Dawnbreaker is because it gave a lot more fizz taken as fire damage. Recently though, I followed eMiracle's guide on how to craft the Giga Rare shield, and that's right here, also on his channel. Pretty good shield, expensive to make. Here's a little clippy of me making it anyway. For the full guide, check out eMiracle's video, but gotta show it to the boys every step of the way so that I can build the hype. As you can see, I've got a few other shields in my inventory already. I ended up bricking like 5 different shields while I was crafting this. It was pretty hyped when I got to this point because I was just ready to slam that Hunter Orb and have it work. And this time, it did. So here's the final result. I managed to get T1 on everything except Chance to Block, which is the mod that I don't care nearly as much about anyway, although I do feel cheated. Here I am using an Orb of Unraveling to try and take the rest of the memory strands on this item and elevate the T2 mod to T1, and it did nothing. It didn't actually elevate. The reason I'm able to swap off the Dawnbreaker for this is because of the additional physical damage reduction. Straight PDR is really good here. Additionally, the max fire res on this shield that wasn't on the Dawnbreaker means I don't need to fix that other ways, such as Purity of Fire. Instead, I just have a jewel which gives +2 to max fire res, and that makes up the +5 I need to get from 85 to 90. The last thing about this shield, which is super good, is that socketed gems have 30% increased reservation efficiency and +2 to level of socketed support gems. I'm of course running an Enlightened support here, which will level up eventually, and that means I have a ton of reservation efficiency on Flesh and Stone and Petrified Blood. This is important because it brings you over 55% reservation efficiency, which means that if you have any sources of leech, you will have Overleech. For information on Overleech, I recommend watching Anime Princess's video on Petrified Blood and Overleech. Basically, you just leech for more often. In addition to crafting this shield, I also swapped over to Ralakesh's Impatience. This is because it gives me CB immunity, it gives me some decent stats, and most importantly, it makes me count as having maximum number of endurance charges. This means I can remove anything on the tree that was helping me gain endurance charges, because I'll always have maximum. Coming back into Path of Building, we can compare the left, which is where I was at League Start, to the right, which is where I'm at now in terms of effective hit pool, Fizz max hit, LE max hit, and Chaos max hit. You can see that I am much more tankier than I was at the beginning of the league, which is expected because of a ton of changes that I've made to the build. Additionally, you can just assume my damage is a little bit better. Again, not great on single target, but really good in an AoE. Finally, we can talk about my mercenary. I'm currently using a Determination mercenary, and so naturally I have a chest that's got Determ Aura effect. I even got a ring that's got Determ Aura effect. And then the other things are just nice things to keep him alive or to help me out, like Shaper's Seed for some regen, this Synth Axe that gives me increased damage, a helmet for him, which is the Vol's Vision, which gives him regen, so that hopefully he stays alive, and of course Calm's Binding to convert some of enemies' Fizz damage to LE damage, for the same reason that I took Fizz Taken as. So this is the version of the build I plan to take to level 100. I'm currently level 99 at 2%. It's going to be a bit of a grind, but I think that this is pretty tanky, can do a ton of map mods, should be fine. Just to show off this build a little bit, let's head into this T17, which has got some not amazing mods on it, and we'll see how I fare. I'm basically able to just walk through enemies, and here I'll sit in this Elder Boom and not take any damage at all. So when I get into a bunch of enemies, the first thing I have to do is wait for Righteous Fire to kill one of them to start spreading that Ignite. Once it does, I have to wait for that Ignite to kill an enemy and cause the Hinakora's Chieftain effect to cause a bigger Ignite. Once that happens, everything on the screen dies. Here's the boss. The boss is a single target. You can see my damage is not good. Part of the reason I use the Hateful Accuser ring is so I can spawn these little phantasms, and hopefully one of them dies and I get an Ignite on the boss and start actually doing some amount of damage. That does, of course, rely on them being close enough to the boss when they die and explode to transfer that Ignite over, which can take a little while sometimes. I think we have gotten an Ignite on the boss, but of course this boss has phases. Luckily, because I'm pretty tanky, I don't need to worry too much about the effects that this boss does. Unfortunately, also because this boss has phases, that means my Ignite's gonna fall off. This boss also spawns other bosses that I need to get an Ignite on, and so it's gonna take a minute for me to actually get through this fight. This is why I'm not running Betrayal this league. This would be awful. The Katarina fight with the phases, I'd have to get a new Ignite every single phase. Gross. And just like that, very easy fight. If you want me to go through the finer points of this build, feel free to drop a comment below. This was just kind of an overview and some of the updates that I made. But yeah, if you're interested, I'll make that video. Bye-bye.